Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, and this is Legal Matters, the program that's designed to address some of the critical issues, controversial issues, sometimes contentious issues that are facing consumers and businesses today. It's legal information, practical solutions, and straight talk about a wide variety of topics, as we tell you. And today we have just David Bizar with us. David,
yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We miss Jackie, but we hope she'll be with us next time. This week's topic, the controversial E-Verify program. The executive order was made, the executive order was rescinded, so we're going to discuss some of those key issues today, a couple of both sides of it, and all of those, of course, were designed by the Homeland Security to keep you safe and warm and supposedly safe through the internet, which of course is another issue. Contractors, subcontractors, vendors, if you're any of those people, pay attention because it really does affect you. So, where should we start? Kacheri be first?
Sure.
And
where the order began?
Yes.
Governor Kacheri entered an executive order requiring anybody who is doing business with the state to participate in the E-Verify program. And then Governor Chafee came in and rescinded that order. I suppose the starting point would be to talk a little bit about what E-Verify is.
That was going to be my question,
Okay.
So do you want to begin?
Yeah, well, E-Verify is a program, as you suggested, that is on the internet and developed by the Department of Homeland Security, and an employer would sign up to be a member, I guess you would say, or a user, a better word, of the E-Verify program. And what they're supposed to do is take the information that's given to them by employees and then feed that into the program to make sure that whoever they've hired are legal immigrants or natural citizens of the United States, so that they have a legal right to work in the country.
Now, if E-Verify is supposed to be the add-on to what I guess most employers work with anyway, the
W-9?
I-9, the I-9.
Well, W-9
form.
is the form that you would fill. I-9 is an immigration form, but...
And that the idea is to make sure that someone is legally here. And at that time, what's in that form, David? Your name, your address, phone number?
So every new employee of a company fills out a W-9. In fact, Jackie's doing that right now for a job that she's going to do as a teacher or a professor at law school. So she's at the school now filling out a W-9. And a W-9 is the information that you would fill out that says your name, address, social security number, date of birth, that identifying type of information. And what E-Verify then does is takes that information a step further by putting it into the program that Social Security and Department of Homeland Security has that would verify, E-Verify, the information that's been given to them to say, yes, this person is who this person says they are.
If someone is already doing this W-9, which I suppose everyone, not just those who are going to be working with the state, all are supposed to make sure that their employees are legal. Now it's supposed to dovetail with E-Verify program. If W-9s aren't always accurate, what consideration is there that the new E-Verify is going to work?
A couple of things. First of all, when you say they're not accurate, one of the things that an employer is supposed to get when they have you do the W-9 and the information, which is the information, I should say, that's going to go into the E-Verify program, the potential employee also has to bring identifying documents or information. So as you said, if it's someone who's here as a legal immigrant with working papers, they bring the appropriate documentation that they got, the green card so-called, that would show who they are and has photo ID and that type of thing. When I filled it out to teach at Johnson & Wales, I had to show driver's license, another form of photo ID, a social security card. I actually used my passport as one of the forms of identification. And then they've now verified, they take a photograph, a photocopy of those documents. They verified that you are the person who's filled out the W-9 and all of that, and then the E-Verify program verifies the rest. Now your question may be, what happens if the documentation that you've given doesn't exactly match up with the E-Verify program?
And often it doesn't. So if you'd like to pick up on that, I have a few anecdotal things to add to that, but certainly,
Yeah.
so what happens with that?
Okay. Tell me what your anecdotal things.
Well, an employer, for example, who has obtained the information from the employee finds out later that the person who supplied the information made a mistake. It wasn't a scam, it was an honest mistake. Meanwhile, the employer has to go back to that employee and try to ferret out what really happened. He could or could not have been suspicious, but the fact of the matter is there was an error. It cost an awful lot of time, and it took an awful lot of, it detracted from the productivity at work, and it also incensed that employee to the point where the employee was ready to say, "You're harassing me." Problem right there.
Well, yes and no. It is a problem. Anytime you have an employee who's made to go through extra steps and is now going to become a little disgruntled, has a multitude of problems, including, you know, as I think you're alluding to, the possibility of a lawsuit.
That was one of the issues,
yeah,
or potential
a
issues.
potential. But if the employer is following all the rules and just doing what he's supposed to do, I think there's going to be some protection in the law for the employer. It's the problem I'm seeing there is the difficulties of the employee. And what has to happen many times is an older person's filled out the Social Security information 40, 50 years ago. My parents, my mom did mine when I was born. And the person who inputted it may have put in my birthday at January 24, 1960 instead of 1959. That's my birthday. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. But it creates a problem because now the information doesn't match up. So what do you have to do? Also, what about the person who's been remarried, names changed, doesn't quite match up?
Doesn't match, exactly.
Someone who's been adopted and now their name has changed. So all of this information has to match up, and it can become a little bit cumbersome. What usually happens, and I think where I've seen it the most as a problem, is where the Social Security information, the Social Security number, and the information you have given as your identification doesn't exactly match up. Now you're back at Social Security trying to fix those problems.
And they say that with the amount of inaccuracies with that alone, it sent many, 13,000 I think they said, just to SSA to take care of that problem, and it's often an arduous task.
Right.
Apart from that W-9 that the employer works with his employees at the time of the hire, apparently there's also an ability for the employer to quickly pick up the phone, call the IRS, and the IRS will, in seconds, be able to say, it matches, it doesn't match. Problem there is if it doesn't match, they don't tell you and aren't responsible to tell you which one is awry.
What's the piece of information that doesn't match up and where you're going to go to fix it? And that can be a bit of a problem. So what happens now is that person is either back at Social Security Administration, and that's usually where it is, and now they're trying to ferret out with somebody what is the piece of information that's not right, and now what kind of proof do I have to bring to you to fix it? For example, if it's the date of birth, it'd probably be a birth certificate. And so what I would encourage people to do that don't know exactly what the problem is as they go to Social Security is to bring everything with them, driver's license, any identifying information they have, and of course the birth certificate.
Knowing how much trouble TSA causes when you want to fly or just go from Boston to someplace in Europe, if one of those numbers is off or one of your letters is, doesn't match up correctly, such a detention and such problem is caused. I can see that most employers are really looking at this now as another layer of burdensome paperwork to deal with. And back to the E-Verify process, this is just about and only about new hires? Or is it retroactive to those who had been on the payroll before?
That's a really good question. And it's a two-part question. E-Verify is about verifying as an employer the right of your employees to work. So when someone signs up for the program, if you were working with the state under Governor Carcieri's original executive order, my question, and I thought about this, and I don't know exactly what the state would have required, because the question you're asking isn't how E-Verify works. What you're asking is, I think what you're asking is, how does the governor's Carcieri's original executive order work, and what does it require the employer to do? Did it require the employer, the subcontractor, the person working with the state, whoever that might be, to go back and verify every employee he had working for him for years and years and years, or is it for just new employees? I would suggest, I think Governor Carcieri would have expected that the employer would go back and recertify everybody, because the point of it, at least as I understand Governor Carcieri's thinking, was we want to make sure that no one who's working for the state has illegal immigrants working for him. So if you don't go back and check on everybody you have, which I do think is maybe somewhat problematic in and of itself.
I would imagine.
But if you don't do that, then how are you really meeting the spirit or intent of what his executive order was?
Okay, and so now, since it's been rescinded, and I understand there's going to have a hearing February 10th about that, does that mean that employers have a pass now between the date that Governor Chafee said it's rescinded till such time that that gets a hearing? All
Sure.
of this month? What happens?
Yeah, well, remember, we're a country of laws. We hear that a lot.
Yes.
And the executive order is a form of a law in Rhode Island, and when the governor could, and there's no statute or Rhode Island general law that requires an employer to do any of this, so it was strictly the governor's order that required it. So when Governor Chafee rescinded it, and I understand his thinking and why he did it, and we can talk about that a little bit. It's really Governor Chafee, when he was a senator, and he always is expounded upon people's constitutional rights in the Constitution, and he's always been a big proponent of what state laws, what are federal laws, etc. His position is that immigration is a federal issue, and it's the federal government that should be dealing with this, not states. And that's the reason, as I understand it, and I haven't spoken to the governor about this, but why he's rescinded the order is he's saying that this problem, the immigration issue, is something that the federal government needs to deal with, not the states. And he's sort of saying, throwing it back to the federal government and say, deal with it. You have to, it's your job, it's not ours. And so the fact that he rescinded the order is a pass. To answer your question in the short, yes, it's a pass. I would say so, because there's no law or executive order now requiring the employer to do that, to follow that process.
I guess most would say that the overarching issue is immigration reform, immigration law,
right,
and how it both gets the reform and how it gets to be executed. Right. And it's interesting, without this becoming a political show, how in the past several weeks it's become, for the new governors, newly elected governors, a bit of a football. Florida, I believe, ended up coming into the fray on the other side of where Governor Chafee had.
Right.
But obviously, I would think both of them would want to have only legal people
right,
working, whether it's for the state government or for your local landscape contractor.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right, and we do try in this show to stay on the legal issue.
Legal side, yes.
Right, and that sometimes becomes a little difficult when, well, it's interesting. It's not really that it's difficult, because I'm not taking any political side on this, but I do understand, which is somewhat of a political philosophy, the difference with some people thinking what are state rights, what are federal rights, and where did the lines blur, and that's sometimes a political issue. Is the old standard thought was that the Republican theory was that you don't trample on the state rights, and the Constitution says that all power is not granted to the federal government, are reserved to the state and the people, and smaller federal government. And in some ways, you have to then look at what is immigration. Immigration is a national issue. And so I would think that it would be easy, even from that side of the aisle, to argue that this is something that has been granted to the federal government to regulate. And a Democrat who might be on the other side of that would probably also agree that there are certain things that are granted to the federal government to regulate. And, Arizona, of course, is probably the poster child of states trying to regulate immigration law. And, it's hard for you and I sitting here in Rhode Island to know exactly what the people and the governor and the folks of Arizona are dealing with immigration. And maybe that's something that we would have to step into their shoes to understand why they took what many people would say is a federal issue on a state basis.
Yes. For the moment, though, if we do stay with the things that are strictly legal or illegal, if for that W-9, E-Verify, or a call that they placed, the employer places to the IRS, if he has a listing of that Social Security number that his employee, his new hire, has just submitted to him, I've recently learned, didn't know, that in fact you can buy those by the roll down in Olneyville Square in Providence, and they just can be very easily obtained. The legal question is, if that employer takes that number and then it's later found out to have been a scam, is he culpable? Is he likely to be disinherited from the state government and not likely to be able to be a legal contractor anymore because now he's not in compliance?
All right. The employer has no reason to know that the employee has perpetrated a fraud, so to speak.
At least initially, yes. He just takes it on faith.
Right. And so to make sure I'm clear with what you're talking about, you're saying that the employee has bought a Social Security number somewhere?
Yes, and it finally comes up that it's now uncovered. What happens to the employer? Is he in trouble? Does he end up being off the list of the state if that was what the law was?
Well, you'd really we're going back to the point where the governor's executive order is in place.
Okay.
All right. So from that premise, you would have to look specifically at the language of the governor's executive order. And my recollection, and I haven't actually looked at it in a little while, but I did at one point, was that there were steps set out for employers to follow in order to comply with the executive order. And if you complied with those steps, got the information from your employee, verified the information through E-Verify, it came back okay, and you had no reason to know because you got all the proper information from your prospective employee at the time you did it, I don't think that would then be grounds. It didn't work, but I don't think it would be ground. It didn't work to do what the governor wanted it to do, obviously.
Yes.
But you as an employee didn't do anything wrong. I don't think that would be an appropriate sanction at that point to say, no, you're not doing business with the state anymore.
Okay, fair enough. And what should the employer do when he discovers that this is a bogus card?
Right. So if an employer is following the rules, he can, at that point, let the employee go and tell him, if this is a mistake, you have to fix it and come back with the proper documentation. Just like he would say at the initial hire that you didn't pass the muster, the test, when I put it through, you have to go fix it. And again, we talked a little bit about whether or not it's going to be grounds for discrimination or some other type of lawsuit.
Yes.
But I would suggest that if the employer is following the rules as they're set out, then to take it a step further and say, no, you did pass initially, but now we've discovered that there was a problem, it would be appropriate to separate that person from employment with you until such time as it is corrected.
And if someone had been illegal initially and didn't go through the screening process, didn't have a problem with the screening process, and then suddenly did find a way to make themselves legal, is the employer in a bad place then for having had that person in his employ while illegal, even though now he is legal?
Okay.
Or is that just too technical here?
No, it isn't.
Because we have heard where someone came in and was not legal but did get to work, and then behind the scenes was working to do it right and to make it right.
And actually successfully
and
completed
did
that.
Complete that.
So here's the issue. again, what is the law that we're applying? And is there a law in effect? Now, if we're talking about someone who was working with the governor's executive order and was subject to the governor's executive order, and they didn't take the steps to comply with the governor's, and when we're talking about Governor Carcieri's original executive
Yes.
order, then they might have a problem. Not because the person who was working for them was illegal, but because they didn't take the steps to find that out. However, going forward, and let's just assume that the order was still in place, now that it's been fixed, I would say as long as the employer goes ahead and follows the system and verifies that that's the case, they're okay.
That sounds good. So employers beware, or
Right.
be aware, I should
Well,
say.
be aware if for some reason Governor Chafee or the legislature or some form or fashion, a rule or law is created that requires you to follow those rules in Rhode Island again.
Right. Can an employer opt out? I don't want to do this.
Well,
I mean, right now, it's,
you are opted out.
you are opted
Right.
out, but,
Here's the thing with the governor's order, remember, it was for people doing business with the state.
with the state.
So if you don't want to do business with the state and you don't do business with the state, then you don't have to participate in that program. A lot of employers do participate anyway.
How does this affect those who are not paid employees with benefits, but say employers want to do the 1099 and they're not giving them benefits, they don't even care about having all of that documentation, they just want them to be a, what do they call it, casual?
Independent contractor.
contractor.
Yeah.
How does that affect, say, Governor Carcieri's
Okay.
situation when it was in effect?
Well, yeah. The independent contractor who's working for your business and doing business on your behalf for the state, then you would be subject. I don't think you can use that as an end run around the governor's order. And it's very interesting because the definition of what an independent contractor is can vary from situation to situation. And so you, by just saying somebody's an independent contractor, may not meet the legal standard, either for workers' comp or for this order or for being sued legally by someone for some wrong that that independent contractor did. If you exercise some control over the person, provide the tools that they're using, for instance, it's the type of work that doesn't require expertise outside of what your business is, then even though you're calling that person an independent contractor, they may not be.
Technically, they're not.
Right.
With current employers right now, employees right now, would you think that in the time that it's taking for this to have a hearing, February 10th, and however else this may change, if someone were on the wrong side of the law, do you have any idea of how long it will take for someone to make it right? You know, there's SSA, there's
Right.
all of these filings. Is it likely that they have time to get it right if they really do want to do that?
It depends what you're talking about.
About making it legal?
Well, if you're talking about someone who's got some information that's just incorrect.
Incorrect. Okay, let's go with that first.
Yeah, that you could probably go to Social Security Administration, whatever you needed to do to fix it and get that done between now and February 12th. It's depending on when someone sees us, it's a little bit of time.
Yes.
However, if it's an immigration issue and you need to do all the work you need to do to be legal to work in this country, it really depends at what stage you are in that process, because that is a process that does take time.
Do you have any idea how long it might take to go through usual
You know,
mind issues that come up along the way?
I think it depends on a number of factors, and one of my former partners practices nothing but immigration law, so if you would ask me that as a lawyer, I'd say let me get Roberto on the phone. However, what I will tell you is this from having worked with him: if you're here with some kind of specialty or expertise and there's an employer who's sponsoring you in bringing you through that process, that is, you have to then verify the need to have somebody in this country to do that because of numbers of people available who have that expertise and can do that. is one process. Someone who came to this country illegally and is now trying to go through the process to become legal is another process. And the amount of time that these things take, as I've seen it over the time, have actually increased. It's harder now.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, especially I think, and this may be attributable to the economy. When the economy was booming and there was very low unemployment and we needed people to work here, the process seemed to work faster. I think and this is anecdotally, I don't have data on this.
But it is good input.
Yeah, but I do think that it takes longer now.
On another but related topic to this, whether it was the W-9 or E-Verify, if that's something that someone's likely to use, can an employer use that to pre-screen an applicant? I would really like to know whether or not that person is legal. If I end up just interviewing him, could I use those systems in place, whether it was W-9 or E-Verify, or that phone call to the IRS to do my due diligence and get it done ahead of time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And that would be something that someone could find out by going online, because this isn't a question about does it comply with the governor's order or any of that type of thing. It's really a question of how does E-Verify work and what are you allowed to use it for. And the answer I will give you to that is I would recommend that whoever's interested in participating as an employer in the E-Verify program, go online. And if you go on to their website, and there's an E-Verify Homeland Security website, you can put in all sorts of questions. Frequently asked questions are in there, of course, and how does it work, how do I enroll? And I would suggest to you that it would tell you whether or not you can pre-screen somebody using the process, or if it's strictly supposed to be limited to, I've hired the person, now they filled out the W-9, and I'm verifying the information on the W-9, which, not having gone through the program and looked at it that closely, would be the sense that I have, because to me, what E-Verify is for is, when can I ask someone to fill out a W-9? When I hired them? Well, then I would suggest, without knowing, because I haven't gone through that website and anyone can do that, is if E-Verify is to verify the information on the W-9, it's not really appropriate to use that until you're at a stage where you're supposed to ask for the W-9.
Admittedly, from what I've read, that's my understanding of it too. But the other side of it is, do you expect right now, with the way the situation stands, not necessarily in Rhode Island, but with them pushing or encouraging E-Verify, that you're going to have more employers being sued for discrimination or failure to hire? Are you going to end up with more business, David?
Well, I don't do that kind of business, first of all, but will lawyers in general end up with that kind of business? We do actually, I shouldn't generalize that much, we do some employment work, and this is an employment discrimination or employment question. So there is some work that could be generated for us. However, what I would suggest again is, I would think, if you're now asking someone for information before you hired them and you're running that information, that might be something that's opening up a door for this type of suit. But if you're following the rules, then you're okay.
Sounds good. And also there'll be other privacy issues that'll be coming up.
Right.
Well, we've touched on employment issues, we've touched on immigration issues, we've touched on a few other things related to E-Verify, and I think that we'll have to have that continue. David, we thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have to figure out where we're going to go with this in the future.
And hopefully Jackie will be with us, and perhaps one of your other partners who specializes in immigration.
Maybe Jackie will have finished her W-9.
Our discussion of legal matters continues. We hope you will join us. This time.